a moment or two. Would that work for you, Anna?
Yes, the live Facebook Live is launching. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the West Philadelphia Teach-In, organized by the Netter Center for Community Partnerships. I am Anna Balfance, one of today's moderators, and a Penn 2019 graduate from the Environmental Studies Department. I am now an Emerson Fellow at the Netter Center, where I support environmental health, environmental justice, and sustainability partnerships. The essential question that we're here to discuss is what next steps do we need to take together to create and advance democratic problem-solving partnerships that support environmental health, social justice, and climate needs in West Philadelphia. In part one yesterday, 4 panelists share their perspectives on local needs related to environmental health and environmental justice, as well as different roles that entities located in West Philadelphia should play in this collaborative work of problem solving around these concerns. We heard deep concerns about old and unsafe infrastructure in homes, schools, and spaces of faith, including lead, asbestos, mold, and high energy costs. We heard about air and soil pollution from dirty fuels from factories and transportation infrastructure located in residential neighborhoods. We heard concerns about the worsening of respiratory and chronic illnesses as climate change progresses, as well as the prevalence of plastic and litter and the need for more green and safe outdoor spaces. We also heard about the need for access to quality and affordable healthcare, housing, nutritious food, and K-12 education, the need for a system of higher education that's actively engaged in these issues, the need for politicians who are effective at every level, and the need to uplift youth voice and engagement. Finally, we heard about the need to organize around community spaces and the need for more funding for existing effective programs. At the last panel, the importance of Penn partnering with existing community organizations to address these concerns was emphasized, and this is exactly who we'll hear from today. Today, we're first going to hear brief presentations from 5 different program leaders in West Philadelphia and Philadelphia, with existing community-based models for collaborative problem solving around environmental health, climate needs, and their intersections. We'll then break into groups to discuss what we've heard and brainstorm ideas for the next steps. I will now introduce our second moderator who will launch our first presentation. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Our moderator, Regina Bynum, is the Director of Teaching and Learning at the Netter Center for Community Partnerships. There, she helps to academically align Penn programming at university-assisted community schools throughout West Philadelphia. As a native Southwest Philadelphian, former teacher, and director of many community-based programs, Regina is familiar with the importance of community empowerment and advocacy to effect positive, sustainable change. Welcome, Regina.
Thank you so much, Anna, and welcome all of our presenters and our participants for today's roundtable and part 2 of our discussion. We're really excited to have you all here. So first off, we are going to start with the Philadelphia Orchard Project. They will be our first presentation. We are honored to have Phil Forsyth, who is the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Orchard Project, and they are going to present on the importance of orchards and green spaces. So just one moment, I'm going to share my screen, and Phil, you can just cue me when you want me to proceed through the slides.
Okay, great. Thank you, Regina and Anna. Great to be here. And this is usually a part of a much longer presentation, so we're going to be going pretty quickly through a lot of slides. But so yeah, I am with the Philly Orchard Project, and we are a nonprofit started in 2007, whose mission is to plant and support community orchards in the city. Next slide. Next. So the original vision back when this was started was to use some of the 40,000 vacant lots in Philadelphia to grow food for those in need. And of course, there's a great need in Philadelphia. Of the top 10 largest cities in the United States, we have the highest poverty rate and high rates of chronic malnutrition, disease, et cetera. So next slide. And then also using other available green spaces in the city, including over 10,000 acres of public parkland, abundant opportunities there. So next slide. So these next slides are going to be about why and what we do, sort of a brief introduction to that. And then I'll take you on a little tour of some of our sites and then talk about needs that we've identified for you to discuss. Most obvious reason to plant orchards in the city, of course, is fresh fruit. Back the slide there. And over the last 13 years, we've helped to plant 50 community orchards in the city and currently support a total of 65 orchard sites, primarily in low wealth neighborhoods in North and West Philadelphia, but all over the city as well. These orchards include over 1,400 fruit and nut trees, and over 3,000 berry bushes and vines, and tens of thousands of companion plantings of perennial flowers, herbs, ground covers, etc. And in the long term, we can imagine and look forward to a real impact on the diet of city residents as these come into production. And we think the best possible way to change people's eating habits is to involve them directly in growing their own food in the city. We hear frequently from our partners about the transformative experience of people tasting fresh fruit for the first time directly from a tree or a bush or a vine. And what that means to people who have never done that before. And last year, over 6,500 people tasted something grown in the Pop Orchard, and over 4,400 pounds of total harvest from these orchard sites. Next slide. So before the, there we go. Before the orchards come into production, which can take a few years, they're powerful tools for building community. And our model is a community partnership model. So every orchard we plant is in partnership with an existing community group in a neighborhood. And so our role is really one of support. So we provide design expertise, plant materials, organizing of planting and care days, and then long-term support in training our partners in how to care for their orchard spaces. But the community partners own, maintain, harvest, and distribute the produce within their own neighborhoods, thus expanding community control over food resources. Next slide. So then we can look at ecological impact, and maybe most relevant to your climate change discussion, I like to talk about a double carbon offset. So fruit trees, like any other trees, absorb atmospheric carbon. At the same time, everything we grow in the city is something that doesn't have to be grown elsewhere. You've probably heard the term food miles. The average distance food travels from where it's grown to where it's consumed in the United States is over 2,000 miles, with huge impacts on fossil fuel use, not only in how things are grown in industrial agriculture, but for the transportation and refrigeration costs to bring them to market. So everything we grow here does not need to be grown elsewhere and using all those fossil fuels. We're reducing carbon in two ways simultaneously with every fruit tree we plant. You can also look at other impacts in terms of ecology, reducing stormwater runoff, providing shade for neighborhood cooling, thus reducing the need to use air conditioning and those fossil fuel uses, and helping to reestablish ecologies in neighborhoods throughout the city, providing residents with a direct experience of nature that is otherwise often lacking. Next slide. So we are not planting commercial scale orchards, they're community orchards, but some of our urban farm partners do sell some of what they grow to support their programs as part of youth agricultural entrepreneurship programs, where youth learn not only how to grow food, but also get experience selling it and creating value-added products and things like that. Next slide. And then educational impact. I often say the most important thing that POP does is reconnect city residents with nature and with the food system. We provide people with, again, that direct experience of growing in the city, harvesting, tasting things grown. And last year, over 7,000 people participated in educational programs in Pop Orchards. And I'll tell you a little bit more about our school orchard program in a bit. Next slide. So the last reason for urban orchards is that fruit trees live a long time, so they can live for decades, sometimes centuries. And cities have traditionally regarded urban agriculture as a temporary land use until something else can be built or developed on the land. We like to advocate with all these multiple benefits they provide that urban orchards and urban agriculture should be accepted and promoted as a permanent part of city infrastructure. Next slide. So now we have a very brief tour of our orchard. So here's a map showing our 65 orchard partner sites in the city. Actually, this one's a little out of date, but there are 65 in total, primarily in lower wealth neighborhoods of North and West Philadelphia. Next slide. And just to show you a few different types of partnerships, you're going to be hearing more about Lee Elementary today, which is one of a dozen city schools we've planted with. Next slide. And Union Baptist Church in South Philly is one of about, I think, 4 or 5 religious institutions we've planted with in different neighborhoods. Next slide. Sunday Breakfast Rescue Mission. This is our most center city location, and actually all the plantings are in raised beds in what had been a parking lot. And this site is a homeless shelter as well as a soup kitchen. Next slide. And Mill Creek Urban Farm here in West Philly, one of many urban farm partners we have in the city. Next slide. And we've planted with Bartram's Garden and many other important historical and horticultural sites in Philadelphia. Next slide. And then right here on campus, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but we have the Penn Park Food Forest, which is one of our best examples of a food forest style permaculture orchard in the south end of Penn Park. It's definitely worth checking out. Next slide. So just briefly talking about some of our other programs besides planting and supporting orchards, Pop Harvest is our gleaning program, which is really these days focused on educating city residents about abundant but mostly overlooked city fruits like June berries and mulberries and crab apples, ginkgo nuts, walnuts that are all around but mostly go unharvested. Next slide. Our school orchard program, like I said, we partner with a dozen city schools, and we've developed a whole set of lesson plans and orchard-based curriculum for our school partners and other partners working with youth to use. Next slide. And then we have PopCore, which is our urban orchardist training program, a 4-part workshop series that we generally offer a couple times a year to train our partners and volunteers and community members. Next slide. And then our latest endeavor is the Pop Learning Orchard at the Woodlands, which is very close to campus as well, at the Woodlands just south of UPenn. And so this is actually the first site where Pop are the direct stewards of the orchard. So it will be sort of our hub for education where we can apply best practices and teach our community partners, volunteers, and the general public about best practices in ecological orchard care. Next slide. Just planted this spring. And part of the long-term plan for the site is to build some other infrastructure, including a climate battery greenhouse, which is a pretty interesting way to grow crops that would otherwise not be hardy in this climate. And basically we'll be pumping hot air from the day down into the soil, heating that up, then recirculating it at night, using 1/10 of the fossil fuel of a typical greenhouse. And so very exciting thing that's probably a couple of years, at least might happen next year, but that's part of the plan. Next slide. And then these are just some of the challenges we've identified that you might discuss. Sustainable fundraising. So urban agriculture, we experience high turnover in the field with many of our partner sites, which with the frequent loss of knowledge and expertise. This is very challenging, complicated, stressful, and very much poorly compensated work. And so we really need more sustainable fundraising for urban agriculture if we're going to keep talent and make these sites as good as possible. Land access and development pressure. So every year we lose more community gardens and orchards to development. Really important that we create more community control over what land is used for in neighborhoods, as well as transparency on the city level about that process. And also strongly advocate ending some pro-development policies like tax abatement, other things like that that contribute to this issue. And then last, diversity, equity, and inclusion within urban agriculture. So the original community gardens movement starting in the 70s was led mostly by communities of color. The one that started in the 90s has really been overrepresented by white people. And so it's very important to address this and find ways to provide training, employment, and leadership opportunities for people from the communities served. So just three of things we've identified that you might think about in this context. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phil, for sharing that insight about the importance of Philly orchards and also just pointing out the importance of why we should have them and the, really trying to have local farms and thinking about, like what you said, I guess the food miles and how far your food may have to travel. And also the importance of those challenges and keeping those in mind and things to consider, the challenges of this work. So thank you so very much. I just want to take this time to remind our audience to please keep your Zoom sessions on mute. You've all been doing a great job. And also, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat and they will be answered as well in the chat, because after the presentations, we're going to move right into our roundtable, and that will be another opportunity for you to ask questions. So we're going to move right along. Our next presentation is from Master Teacher Ms. Green, who is at the Lee Elementary School. Ms. Green has been a University Assisted Teacher Partner for many years with our academically based community service courses in environmental science. And she will be presenting with Anna Belfance, who you heard from earlier. And Anna is, just as a reminder, our Netter Center Emerson Fellow. So one moment, I'm just going to queue up their slides and we can move right along.
Thank you, Regina. And we have student Emma Steckel, who's also going to be joining us as well for the presentation. For this presentation, I'm just going to first summarize a model that the Netter Center has been supporting for over 15 years that integrates local collaborative environmental health action into K through 16 plus academics. I was involved with this myself as a student. And then after a summary, our amazing teacher-student team will speak on their recent experience with this engagement. Currently, Penn has 6 academically based community service, ABCS courses that are focused on an environmental health topic of local concern, including air quality, lead poisoning, asthma, smoking, and water-related topics. In these courses, they form cohorts that go into a classroom in a local K-12 public school in West Philadelphia. There, once a week for approximately 6 weeks, they talk with the students and have them practice simple, actionable, and low-cost, free, or cost-saving steps that they and their families and their peers and their communities can take to reduce these environmental harms and injustices. Throughout all of this, students of all ages are encouraged to become positive change agents in our communities. If you could go to the next slide, Regina. And next slide. In this model, College students get to work in cohort teams that they enter into the classrooms with, and by the same token, next slide, by bringing around 5 college students into each classroom, the K-12 students also get to work in small cohort teams. Next slide. We have the college students collecting data for their course. Here's a student collecting soil for lead sampling. Next slide. They visualize the data and they analyze the data. And a few more clicks. And by the same token, the K-12 students have the same opportunities to collect data in their buildings. Here's a student reading off a particulate matter monitor in their auditorium and outside. And here's them measuring the lead content in the soil that they've collected. And we can go through these slides fairly quickly. If we can just They, at the same time, they also visualize the soil with the lead, with the particulate matter, and then they also have the opportunity to analyze it. And then consider the next steps that can be done to address what they've uncovered. We have the opportunity for college students to speak through surveys and to survey their peers on these topics. No, you can just keep clicking. Thank you so much, Regina. They did a survey about vaping. And the K-12 students have the same opportunities to speak through surveys and to collect data in this way. Of course, we have the college students make posters and present to their peers. We can do a bunch of clicks. And we have our K-12 students make posters. And letters. And skits and songs. And presented to their peers. In this way, this helps solidify the learning, and it also helps everyone actively practice speaking out about these issues in a way that's exciting and fun to them, but also shares real tips that can be brought outside of the classroom. And then finally, if we just keep clicking through, I'll just say that this model is highly replicable and could be used for all types of climate action. And in fact, it already has been replicated for a similar purpose with a course in the engineering department where you bring college students and high school students together into the high school classrooms to learn about energy efficiency and weatherizing. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our teacher, Miss Green, who's been our partner for many years, as well as one of the students that we worked with last year, Emma.
Yes. Hi, my name is Tanya Green. I am a 5th grade teacher at Lee School. I have worked with the ABCS courses for the past 3 years. My students love it. They love it. As a teacher, it's hard to turn my class over to someone else. But when the students from the university come over, they are very professional. They come, they observe, and then they teach the lessons. They're always prepared. They do realize that they're not to be too friendly with the students because the students have to respect them. But my students get excited to hear someone else's voice other than mine. I wanted to bring one of my students with me, Emma Steckel. I think, Emma, you participated for 2 years as well because you had it for 4th and 5th grade. So Emma, go ahead and talk about your experience.
When I was in 4th grade, we had classes from Penn students. They came in and they taught us about idling and how it was bad and it polluted, and also about what things to recycle and not recycle, and how everything worked like that. And my class just got so excited, and we really and when the day of the week that they would come with, we would be like, Penn students are coming today. And so we felt really involved with the lesson.
Yes. Thank you so much, Emma. Anything else you want me to say, Anna?
I don't think so. Thank you, Ms. Green, and thank you, Emma, for bringing your thoughts on this.
Thank you all for that lovely presentation about the importance of university-assisted community school partnerships and the value and how it's mutually transformative for both teachers, the Penn students, and the K-12 students. So thank you so much. Next, we will hear from Susan Haidar. Susan is the she's the Community Environmental Center Parks and Rec education planner for the Cobbs Creek. And she will share with us a little bit about the good work being done in Cobbs Creek to encourage engagement with the natural world. Welcome, Susan. Susan, I think you're on mute. Oh, there you are. We're going to try to unmute you.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Hi. Okay.
Welcome.
I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what we do here at Cobbs Creek Community Environmental Center. And then I'm also going to tell you a little bit about a couple things that our department is doing in this area that would relate to climate change. Okay, so we're one of 3 environmental centers in the Philadelphia Parks and Rec system. You know, we're very lucky to have 3. The others are Pennypack Environmental Center and Wissahickon. This facility has only been staffed by the city for about 3 years. It was founded by a group called, with the same name, a nonprofit group, but they sort of became inactive and the city decided to staff it with its own staff. So our primary goal is to connect the community surrounding here to the wonderful natural resource of Cobbs Creek Park. We also provide a place for the community to meet in our building, engage in natural history interpretation. Part of our mission is to host school groups, summer camps from the city, and other organizations that come on field trips. So we go out as much as we can into nature, as opposed to doing things in the building. I do see more room for us to introduce climate change into the programs in a small way, so we'll be thinking about that. Okay, so our programs are designed for both children and adults to get to know nature here in the park. We've a lot of hands-on programming, such as insect exploration in the meadow, birding, decomposers, where we look for animals in the forest that live in logs and other organisms. Creek exploration. We kind of follow the seasons with what we do and gear programs towards each season. We also work with community groups on cleanups and high school students on service learning projects. We are looking to team up to do small scale forest restoration projects as another thing we do. We also offer some art and nature programs, such as participating in the National Wildlife Services Junior Duck Stamp Contest. And we have festivals that are free and, open to all the neighbors. And one of them has been the Harvest Festival at this time of year, and the other is the Maple Sugar Festival in the winter. So most of our programs are free or of minimal cost, and that really benefits the neighborhood here. We also partner with Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts who use the building here, and sometimes we do something for them. And we're partnering with the Philadelphia Orchard Project, who you heard from earlier, where they have planted an incredible food forest here. We hope to do more programming in the future with that. Another thing that's important to know is we are sort of the eyes and ears of the park in this area. So we walk the park and report problems, downed trees, flooding, sewage issues, invasive species, and illegal activities such as dumping, which without people here, the park staff is very small in terms of who's in the park and looking around. And another, let's see, to talk now about the benefit of the what we call the watershed parks towards climate change, there are these large acreages that protect our streams and rivers. They provide a cooling effect through transpiration and shade and oxygen production. In addition, they give people a place to escape the stresses of urban life and the heat in the city, and green spaces countering asthma, providing mental health benefits, giving people safe places to bike, walk, and hike, thereby combating some health issues such as obesity and cardiac issues. Now, the Parks and Recreation that maintains over about 10,000 or 6,000 to 10,000, I've heard different figures of native vegetation parks and street trees. So one of the programs here is the free street and yard trees. So yard trees are through a program called Tree Philly, and Tree Philly recently did an assessment of the tree coverage in the city, and that report's called Tree Canopy Assessment, published at the end of 2019. It showed a net loss of 6% of the tree canopy within 10 years within the city. So currently that department is in a strategic planning process that will involve community engagement to increase the tree canopy. They know there's issues of equity. Some neighborhoods having very few trees, and the Cobbs Creek area is one of those. So very few trees and therefore very high on the urban heat island index. So equity in West Philly and other neighborhoods will be one of the issues addressed in the future planning for Tree Philly, and getting as many people as possible to get trees in their yards, eventually street trees too. The other program I wanted to mention is also in the Cobbs Creek area. There's a section of Cobbs Creek called Haddington Woods, and that is just north of Market Street. And the city there has restored part of the forest. It was full of invasives and trash, and they kind of started over. But what's interesting about it is that they have planted 10 species of southern trees and shrubs, and they will be monitoring them throughout the years. They're testing them to see if how well they will do if our climate changes significantly, where our own northern tree species are dying or having difficulty. So there are, like I said, 10 species, 36 of each were planted in 3 test areas. And those areas, if you were to walk in that area, you could probably access it around 65th and Vine Street. They have deer fencing around them. You can go in through little gates. There's trails in there, and it's pretty interesting project. So this year, in the early 2020, they did do the first of some evaluation. They are seeing that not all species are making it, but it's really a long-term project to see how that works. And then lastly, to let you know that in the last 20 years, there's a lot of restoration that has been done in Cobb's Creek, planting of several meadows, which include the Whitby Meadows and the meadow here at our environmental center, and then restoring the forest in number of areas like Haddington Woods here at the environmental center area and Indian Creek. And of course, maintaining a healthy forest is essential to maintaining green space. The water department has also engaged in stream restoration projects. So that's all I have to report on today.
Thank you so much, Susan. It was really fascinating to hear about the planting of the southern tree species and kind of how the city is going to sort of see how that pans out if the climate continues to warm, given that some of our northern species are suffering, and also the really great work that you're doing at Cobb's Creek. And I just wanted to share more broadly how you said you had some students today doing a bird walk earlier. So that's just really great, because it's so important to be able to engage in our natural spaces. And sometimes it just doesn't happen naturally without a little bit of prompting. So thank you so very much for sharing.
Sure, my pleasure.
Our next presenter is Fish Elias. She is the Solar Projects Coordinator for Solarize Philly. And she's going to speak about some of those initiatives at the Philadelphia Energy Authority, and present on other solar initiatives in Philadelphia. So welcome, Mafish, and I'm going to share my screen again and get your slides going. One moment.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Regina. Hello, everyone. My name is Mavish. I am the Solar Projects Coordinator with the Philadelphia Energy Authority. Before I start my presentation, I just want to take this opportunity to share that I'm really excited to be here today alongside other partners, experts, and a lot of familiar faces, including Dr. Andrew Humler, who was one of my professors and mentors at Penn and really sparked my interest further in solar. So I will be talking more about the impact that Solarize Philly has created in Philadelphia, and also how we're using energy as a tool for economic development and for addressing environmental challenges. So as you can see on the next slide, this is a very brief overview about Philadelphia Energy Authority. We are an independent municipal agency that was created in 2010. And in 2016, we launched our main flagship campaign known as the Philadelphia Energy Campaign, with a goal to create 10,000 clean energy jobs by 2026. And since the launch of the campaign in 2016, we have already created close to 1,000 clean energy jobs. And on the next slide, you can see a snapshot of the ideology behind the Philadelphia Energy Campaign. Obviously we want to promote clean energy and affordable energy options, but at the same time, we want to address other challenges that we face in the city, including poverty and public health concerns. So we use energy as a driver for economic development to create jobs and at the same time improve public health. And we do so by creating projects and programs in 4 main sectors, including the school district, municipal buildings, small businesses, and residential units. And we recognize that energy efficiency and clean energy can play a significant role in improving the health of communities in Philadelphia. So you can go to the next slide, please. So under the overall umbrella of Philadelphia Energy Campaign, we launched Solarize Philly back in 2017, which is a citywide program to help all Philadelphians go solar. It is modeled after the concept of a group of people coming together to tap into group bank discounts. And as you can see on the next slide, I'm really excited to share that Solarize Philly, since we launched it in 2017, has now the single largest Solarize initiative in the whole country. We are currently in the 4th phase of the program. And since the launch of the program in 2017, we have received signups from more than 6,000 property owners all across Philadelphia who signed up for the program just to get an initial assessment done for their property to see if solar would be a good fit. From this pool, 680 people have already moved forward in the process, and they've signed a contract to get solar installed. And through this program, we have injected about $11 million in Philly's economy, and Solarize Philly alone has created about 94 direct clean energy jobs. We can go to the next slide. One slide back. Thank you. Perfect. So I would say that the biggest driver for success for us has been building partnerships and working really closely with the communities. Before the launch of Solarize Philly, there were a lot of solar developers and installers who refrained from working in Philadelphia. And this was because, there was lack of a platform that would bring together all the partners and stakeholders to overcome the challenges and roadblocks that we have in expanding the solar market in Philadelphia. So since the launch of the program, we have been building partnerships and working really closely with organizations such as PICO and licensing and inspection to make the process easier for everyone, and also to streamline everything for homeowners, as well as solar installers and developers, so that they would recognize that Philadelphia has a great potential for solar. And since then, Philadelphia has actually emerged as one of the fastest growing solar markets in the country. And solar installer is a high occupation, employment opportunity in Philadelphia. At the same time, we've been working very closely with community-based organizations, neighborhood organizations to educate people, just to spread the word about Solarize Philly, and also to let them know that solar is actually a great fit for a lot of row homes in Philadelphia, including for flat roofs. And solar is actually a smart investment, and going solar can actually lead to savings on your electric bill. And as you can see on the next slide, we've been participating in a number of community meetings. We've been organizing our own events. And I always say that community really lies at the heart of everything that we do. This year has been really challenging. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we haven't been able to participate in community meetings, and we haven't been able to organize events. But instead, we've been hosting a series of webinars and virtual events just to let people know that Solarize Philly is still an opportunity for Philadelphians to go solar, and also to educate the people that our pre-approved solar installer, Solar States, has the ability to complete the installation process following all the COVID-19 guidelines. We can go to the next slide. Perfect. So this year, we also have a special offering for low and moderate income households that are at or below 80% of area median income. There is no credit requirement to participate in this program, and a significant portion of the installation cost is actually being covered by the Philadelphia Energy Authority. And as you can see on the next slide, this grant program has been made possible by a number of different partners and a blend of public and private financing. So we are using the Solarize Philly program fee, the fee that solar installers have been paying to participate in the program, as well as a grant that we received from the state through Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. And for the remainder of the installation cost, we have arranged for a low financing mechanism through a solar loan, which is being managed by NIFE. And the funding for the loan has been provided by Centennial Park CDC, which in turn got the funding from William Penn Foundation and Spark. So this is a wonderful, beautiful example of how a group of partners are coming together in Philadelphia to make solar more accessible, and also to create more jobs and to drive the economy. And I'm really excited to share that a lot of the signups and contracts signed for Solarize Philly are actually from West Philadelphia. So that's really exciting to see. We can go to the next slide. So I know that I've talked about creating jobs, but the other side of the equation is that we also must create opportunities for the youth, and we must have a pool of people who are educated and skilled to take up those clean energy jobs. So we've been working and running two parallel training programs. One is for the high school students, and the other one is for young adults from ages 18 to 30. And we've also been working with the partners to find job placements and internships for these solar graduates. And based on the success of the training program, I'm really thrilled to share that we have received permission from Pennsylvania Department of Education to launch the first ever CTE solar program in Pennsylvania, which will serve as a model for other states. And then again, this has been made possible with the help and support from other partners. As you can see on the next slide, partners including ECA, which we also have on the call, Youth Build, Power Corps PHL, PICO, Solar States, the School District of Philadelphia, Green Futures, Work Ready, and of course the Philadelphia Education Fund. So if you know anyone who can benefit from going solar, feel free to send them our way. As you can see on the next slide, we have our web link here, which is solarizephilly.org. And folks can simply go to this website to sign up for the program. And I would conclude this presentation by leaving everyone with my contact details. Feel free to send me an email or give me a phone call if you have any questions or if you would like to learn more about how we are creating an impact in Philadelphia and West Philadelphia. I'd love to hear from all of you. And once again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and a huge shout out to Anna and Regina for putting together this awesome event.
Thank you so very much, Marfish. This was amazing. You're doing amazing work, and this is so timely because with Penn just being very interested in some projects to get involved in with their carbon offsets, I think that we've heard today a lot of opportunity with Solarize Philly for potential projects. And it's amazing that the work that you are doing in West Philadelphia, and I have to say congratulations to the CTE programming in Pennsylvania. That's just, it's just amazing. And also the pilot program. I could go on, okay, but we don't have time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna stop sharing at this time. And last but not least, we are going to hear from Professor Andy Huemler. He is a senior lecturer in the School of Engineering and Applied Science, and he will present on weatherization projects and efforts of the Energy Coordinating Agency. Welcome, Professor Huemler.
Great. Thanks, Regina and Anna, for putting this together. First off, I have to say it's wonderful to see two of my former students, Anna and Mavish, on the panel today. It makes me feel like either I taught well or they paid attention to me a few years ago, and it's great to see the significant contributions that they've made. I'm going to talk today about the Energy Coordinating Agency. It's an organization that I've been familiar with for quite a while. I've sat on the board of directors for the last 10 years. ECA is quite an interesting organization. It's been around for 30 years. We've weatherized about 40,000 low-income homes in Philadelphia, repaired or replaced an equal number of heating systems. We've painted a lot of white roofs. We have 60 employees. Our training center is located in West Kensington, in the poorest zip code in the city. And the primary thing we do is coordinate the delivery of energy services to low-income residents in Philadelphia. Those include things like fuel assistance, heater repair, weatherization, and more we're making links to things like Mavish's efforts in solarizing Philadelphia. The simple way that we do this to get people on board with us is working with neighborhood energy centers throughout the city. We have 14 of them. They're all with established neighborhood groups. And rather than having residents go downtown to City Hall and sign up for this program or that program, they come into a neighborhood energy center. They sit down with an intake person there, and they're signed up for every program that they're eligible for. ECA puts that package together, goes out to a person's home, and with weatherization funds from the state, for instance, they insulate the house, air seal it. With funds from the gas works, they do similar measures. With funds from PECO, they'll install energy efficient light bulbs. With funding from the water department, they'll put in low flow shower heads. So it's a constant packaging of all of those funding streams to deliver one unified service to customers, residents in Philadelphia. The other thing that we do other things while we're in the home. We don't weatherize homes that have mold problems until we fix those mold problems, so we pay attention to that. We do a lot of training in weatherization, also heater repair, HVAC systems, and as Mavish mentioned, we also do solar training. So we partner with an awful lot of folks in the city on many different levels. It is a very established model. We've been at it for 30 years. People have really figured out how to address the problems in low-income households. At the onset of all of this, geez, this was 20 or 30 years ago when I first started to get interested in this, I heard the phrase that you had to be just smarter than a 2x4 to figure out how this works. You have to be a lot smarter than a 2x4. Low-income houses low-income houses and older houses in Philadelphia are complicated. You have to pay attention to building shell. You have to pay attention to the energy systems inside the house. You have to pay attention to behavioral changes. And putting all of those things together, you can do really good things to reduce energy costs, make the home warmer, and the like. All of the work that we do is very highly scrutinized by our funding agencies, so we've learned how to do it well. One of the takeaways that I want to get across here is that this is a replicable model. This model can be done elsewhere. Yes, it took ECA a long time to get to where we're at, but it's not that complicated, and it's replicable, it's expandable, it's something we could do in more and more neighborhoods. There are challenges. Sometimes we have difficulty getting customers for this. We are often given lists of high use, low income customers. We try to contact them and they just don't want to hear from us. We also have difficulty getting trainees into some of our programs. They come in very enthusiastic, a lot of smiling faces in our training center, but we've discovered that many of them have trouble using a tape measure. So you're starting out with a very low education level. We teach them how to do that. We teach them then how to caulk windows, do some basic carpentry skills, which enables them to do simple home repairs, teach them a little plumbing. They can do that, teach them how to repair heaters. And there's real career path opportunities here with these basic skills. So we're doing a lot of different partnerships with a lot of different organizations, many of the ones that Mavish mentioned. We're looking forward to new opportunities out there. One of the partnerships we're advancing now is with the university. As Mavish mentioned, I've put together a course where Penn students go to the Energy Coordinating Agency, learn the basic lessons of how to weatherize and solarize homes, learn how to make healthy homes, learn how to address those issues, and learn about career pathways in this space. They then go back to the university, add some STEM content to what they've learned, and to build lesson plans where last spring they went out to West Philadelphia High School and Sayre High School to give some short lessons in these three topics. They were well received, and it kind of stopped during the pandemic, but we look forward to getting back and doing that again. So yeah, we're pretty excited about this. We think, again, this is something that could be expanded. We think it meets many of the issues that we face today, not only climate change, but health, jobs, environmental justice, community development, and the like. And look forward to partnering with people going forward. With regard to contact information, the best way to do it is to look at ECA's website, which is www.ecasavesenergy.org, ecasavesenergy, one word.org. So thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so very much, Professor Humler, and to all of our presenters today. This has been an amazing amount of time and an amazing amount of information sharing. Professor Humler, just to highlight just a few things that you said, amazing work with the training with students. I really appreciate how the mold is taken care of before the weatherization occurs, and just the training with the HVAC, the plumbing, the home repair is so important for the work that we do in our communities to potentially lead to careers. So that's just amazing work that's being done. At this time, we are going to transition into our roundtable discussion. I'm going to share my screen briefly, but we're going to break out into maybe 4 or 5, I think 4 breakout rooms to discuss a few topics with each other. This is going to allow us to kind of unpack and dig deeper about how can we really collaborate together with Penn, with each other to, you know, figure out a lasting, sustainable way that we can democratically and collaboratively approach this important, so very important work in West Philadelphia. So just give me one moment. I'm going to share my screen to show the prompts for our next session. And just while I'm doing this, please keep in mind that the prompts will also be shared on your screen when you go into your breakout rooms. Okay. With you as you go into your breakout rooms. Give me one more. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Okay, so thank you for your patience. The first
Do people need to be assigned to breakout rooms? Rich, do you want to join a breakout room? You're muted.
Yes, but I'm not sure what I do. Just hit join breakout room.
Yes.
But
Lynette?